Kellen, thank you for being here. And I'm just going to kick things right off. How long has it been since you've been creating content on LinkedIn as a founder?
Yeah, that's a great question. What's funny is I think, well, okay, so creating content as a founder has been since day one of being a founder. I was a
Okay.
content creator on LinkedIn prior to really being a founder on LinkedIn. Now, technically, actually, when I created my LinkedIn forever ago back in college, I was running my own little business, and
Okay.
but I didn't really do too much posting.
Okay. So it's been what, over a year now that you have D-Lab?
Yeah, it's been like a year, like almost coming up on two years in a few months.
So you've been a content creator in the past, and were you creating content as an employee back then, and then you had to transition to this founder thing?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and like, I blended the lines maybe a little bit with that even as a employee.
Okay. Okay.
Because I've so I as an employee, I created a guide on how to get like an SDR job, right? And so I created that, and so for a
Okay.
while I was posting a lot of stuff around that, and so it's kind of interesting because that was basically founder posting as a as a rep, that working for someone, but um yeah, so it's I've just been posting literally since actually I got into like B2B sales, like literally day one. I've been like doing some sort of like using LinkedIn. It's always been the semblance of an idea that like LinkedIn is a place that you want to have a reputation. You're actually muted. Sorry, it muted you.
Yeah, it should be okay now.
Yes, yes,
But
yes,
by
yes.
the way, are you hearing me through the mic or is it through the AirPods?
I
What's the
think.
quality like? Is it okay?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, then fine. We can just roll with it. Oh, I can cut this part out. No worries.
yeah.
So I I wanted to. I'm curious, right? You said that you kind of teased this sort of content even while you were an employee or transitioning into becoming a founder. Whenever people ask me, or if I tell them like, "Hey, why should you be creating content on LinkedIn as a founder?" I think it comes down to a very basic question, and that is your target audience on LinkedIn or not? So when you were trying to do this founder branding thing, was that the same metric that you measured, or what were your plans? Like, why did you come into this?
Yeah. So when I really first started posting heavily on LinkedIn, like I got an enterprise SDR job at a
Okay.
cybersecurity company, and I knew I I was really excited to be getting into tech sales. I was a young, eager guy, and I knew like, wow, this is really technical. I don't know this stuff, and I was like a naive little kid basically. And I'm like, all right, how do I learn this stuff? I'm like, oh, you subscribe to
Yeah.
Hacker News and stuff like that. So I had ARS Technica, like a few of these different like IT security websites. And so what I would do is I literally would every morning I walk into work and I would go onto my computer and I'd like look at a few different things and I just find like some sort of news thing and I'd throw it on LinkedIn and be like, if you're not buying my software, this is you, like not literally exactly, but like
Yeah.
basically that. It's so stupid, no one would have liked it, but it did get me into this pattern of like reading and thinking and doing something with it. And, you're connecting with people. So I met a couple of guys, there's this one dude who like became my friend. I think he just knew I was like a random rep. He's like,
Okay.
I got to befriend this dude. Um, but I just had this impulse that like, to me, it's like about taking, participation, right? Like being a part of, it's like this thing is happening like outside of you, right? Like
Yeah.
cybersecurity is and so to me, a lot of vendors are kind of like, we have an opinion, we're trying to like drag you into this, and I think it works well to talk about and share your ideas, because it either creates curiosity or disagreement or some other type of thing that's basically like
Yeah.
great for engagement and communication.
Yeah, absolutely. And for you, I mean that's another important question. When you started creating content as a founder specifically, what was the end goal? Was it primarily to generate revenue for your business, or did you want to become a thought leader or being known as a thought leader? What was your end goal when you started?
Yeah, so one of my mantras is like everything I want in life will come on the other end of
Hmm.
something I'll do for someone else. And so I think social media is amazing because it's a way that you can like amplify and like scale impression, like
Hmm.
engage, like and like, because I think a lot of people think of like impressions and engagement from a social standpoint, which is kind of like, I'm trying to sell something, I post about something, how many engagement, how much engagement do I get? And it's like this unit of like consumption against
Yeah.
your goal. And to me, I see it more like I feel so lucky that like I get to meet the yous, like someone like
Yeah.
you who goes, hey, I'm gonna go find people doing these things. Like I get to meet you and I get to talk about that here and we get to know each other. You know what I mean? Someone will hear this and they'll ask me about it. Like, and
Oh
to
yeah.
me, and that's the impression, you know what I mean? Because to me, what happens is like if you're the person that people like having this guy around makes people smile more and he has good ideas and he's not too um he's not a taker, like he's not just injecting himself trying to be like, what
He
do I
gives
get
as
out of
well.
this?
Yeah.
But it's like if you can be a catalyst to positive like change basically, I think it's like there is more demand for that than there's great supply of it. And a lot of
Yeah.
people think of it as like, how do I extract, which is not about what you're supplying into the environment. And so I think that like posting is a way that you can sort of, one, almost like PLG your expertise, like, hey, I'm just gonna put it out there for free.
Yeah.
Two, you meet people, right? And like three, you learn, because if you post things, people are gonna fight you. and
Yeah.
and you're going to learn. You're going to have this like nice little anti-fragile sort of thing. And so to me, it's just an amazing flywheel that like everyone should be taking part in basically. And the reason
Yeah.
I
What?
did it is because I knew what I was doing. I was transitioning from being like an employee to a founder. So no one's going to know that unless I
Yeah.
tell them, first of all. And it
True.
was just a way of continuing to sort of like, for me, it's also like a way, I guess I kind of avoid like commoditization and like having to like compete with others in my space, because there's a lot of people that do
Yeah.
similar mechanisms as what my business does, but like what we do and sort of the value you're going to extract from that with us is like we're literally aimed at things differently than, or like we're oriented differently than most people in our space. And so
Yeah.
the opportunity to go share that is like a huge, it's helpful, right? Like we're not a business that has to hide how bad we are. We get to show how good we are. And so,
Yeah.
those things like a way that we can do that.
It's interesting that you mentioned a bit about your differentiation, right? That you said that you guys do some things that makes you stand out in the rest of the market. But if you never talked about it through your founder brand, let's say, nobody would know. And then whether you'd like it or not, you would probably become a commodity at some
Yep.
stage, right? So
100%.
that element of showing that and shouting it out in a way that people see that you're credible and you know your stuff, just how important is that for a business like yours?
It's funny. I way more important than I realized. And the reason I say this is
Really?
because the other day I changed my website. Like for the first, like when I started my business, I built my website like the first day and it basically stood up almost exactly like that since day one. And
Okay.
it was pretty good. And it was like pretty good. And if you think about it, right, like anyone who started like the day one, I was a lot more of a commodity, right? Because
Yeah.
I had ideas, but I hadn't like done it 100 million times like today where it's like, okay, we know.
Yeah.
So basically I changed my website and immediately I can tell like how people are filling out inbound forms. I'm like, holy
Really?
smokes, like it's like I'm a new business, you know what I mean? And it's
Oh,
cool
wow.
because I did a better job this time of capturing sort of like, I think exactly, it's like taking it's like we say we're this, people come to you, they ask you questions, you run discovery, you close or you don't close, but you use
Yeah.
these conversations to loop back into like, what am I like? How do I need to talk about this? Right. And it's that flywheel. And so, um, so it's like that originated via socials, right? Like I saw this not off social, but a lot of my inbound traffic is random
Mm,
people who see my social media like all my, I don't pay for ads. I don't, I
mm,
have a little bit of SEO stuff, but like not enough that that's, some sort of big anything. And so usually someone's coming inbound. It's like someone who saw me posting or talking in like online
yeah.
spheres. So it's ridiculous. I mean, it's definitely worth multiple millions of dollars to me that I
Yeah.
get to post on LinkedIn, which is insane.
That is absolutely crazy. And if you were to, I mean, you mentioned that people come to you inbound, right? That you might have some sort of a like a self-reported attribution kind of a thing where they tell you like, hey, we saw your content or maybe something like that. But the reason I mentioned that is generating inbound inquiries specifically through LinkedIn, it must have taken some time, right? Because it's not like paid social where you put an X and return Y. So what was that like for you?
Yeah. So I was really fortunate that I had a pretty strong rep. Like my brand was quite strong day one of my
Mm,
business starting. So
okay.
I had a strong brand. But what I'll say is, one, like the viability of the early days of the business extremely predicated on me having already done that. Like that was
Mm,
insanely like it, instrumental. And once I think like once I hit like the one like when I hit about the 1 year mark in my business, I also got another big acceleration of like inbounds and referrals. And I think it was
Mm-hmm.
kind of like people who knew I existed, but like
Mm.
probably like really wise people who knew I existed and probably really like me and are gonna go, I'm gonna help this guy out by not helping him out too much and I'm gonna let him do his thing. And later it started coming. You know what I mean? And I think again, definitely like social related, where it was clear to me that like, oh, people are feeling like I'm further down this path now, that they're more willing to like give me things, or like send me
That is
business.
an
And
interesting take. Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that wouldn't have existed if I wasn't posting, because otherwise you're just
Yeah.
like it's like people seeing this narrative over time, over time, over time. Like you can, and even I mean, honestly, one of the things that I think is really interesting about I don't know if it's social exactly, but
Okay.
I think it probably is like there's times that we'll have a fractional head of sales consultant that'll have their own client and then they'll come bring us in, right? Pretty super
Okay.
common. Um, we've had in like anytime we're coming in on like an early project, it's sort of like we're usually kind of not usually half the time we're like testing like viability messaging, right? So about half the time it's sort of like we're gonna segment the market, run some messages, see is there like a repeatable process here. The other half of the time they have that, we're sort of like doing more with it. But when we are oh, I'm losing my train of thought a little bit. When
No
we
worries.
are ooh, I lost it, man. I lost it.
No worries. We can go back to later when you remember it.
No worries.
But you mentioned something that I was recording an episode with Mason from Scrap ABM the other day, and he mentioned something like a lot of the time the success that he had through his founder brand on LinkedIn was could be attributed to the reason that he simply outlasted other people who tried the same thing as he was doing it, but they just couldn't last long. For whatever reasons, maybe they gave up because they saw no ROI or anything like that. But for you, just how important do you think it is to stay in the game, even if you don't see your ideal ROI within 1, 2, 3, or 4 months?
Yeah, you have to like the way I would see it is this. I would say anyone who quit didn't deserve to win it, and it's good they stopped because they like,
Nice.
no offense, guys, but like because the whole thing is if you're doing it going like I'm doing this so that someone will give me things and like that's just it, like
Mm,
that reeks of BS, like that sucks.
mm,
That's because there are, I, it's like there's the services we do tend to be somewhat of a like there's very few services out there that's like if they don't work with you they're done, right? It's like there's always
yeah.
something else, always. Yeah. And so a lot of times it's like you need a service, like your services and products need to be like good enough, like with strongly good enough, the better. But I think that like who you're working with and sort of how you engage with people, I think people just care about that type of stuff way more than like the term is like employee minded people realize.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And so I think like as an employee, it's easy early on to be like, oh, I'm really oriented towards like how many like certain little like micro things. And I
Hmm.
think like, and if you're just in this like hyper transactional world and you're like kind of like, oh, maybe I'll stop. It's like, yeah, I don't know. That just because there's people out there who are kind of like, hey, I have this skill set and I'm really, like, I know for me, like, I got fired from a job and I was like, I'm going to do this business until like my family is homeless. Like, it's going to be all the way
Yeah.
up, all the way down. And there was no decision. There's no, is like, it's
You
like,
wanted
no,
to see it through. Yeah.
it was just like 100% that. And so I think like the people doing that, it's sort of like social is a way to shine a window into who you are. Right
Mm.
now, people, I think,
Socialist by Arkells now playing.
So,
Siri.
no worries.
Anyways, I think it's like it's basically a portal into a person, right? And if someone's kind of going like, I, it can present too easily as like a facade, because we've all seen
Mm.
people like all of a sudden go really hard on posting, and
Oh,
even
yeah.
I think it's like people need to be a person, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like
Yeah.
I think congruency between like your personality, your posting behaviors, and sort of like how you do your branding and stuff, I think is really good
Yeah.
too. And so I would just tell people like treat it like posting is in of itself the goal. Don't focus
Hmm.
too much. And I think it's like you can't need too much too quick. You need to be in a situation where like I'm gonna invest in doing this.
Mm.
And I think people just need to last thing I'll say on it is like
Yeah.
is like I think was it's like reading teaches you about the world, writing teaches you about yourself, right? And so I would
Mm,
just say it's like if you're doing social media posting and you don't think the biggest benefit is like what you will learn about yourself and your ideas and your thinking, like you're wrong. You're oriented poorly. And I think
mm.
that in that type of environment, someone's like, I'm trying to accelerate a certain result. I'm trying to minimize how much effort, it's like that's just nothing works well out of that type of environment.
Yeah. No, 100%. I agree with that whole thought process. And if we were to, Kellen, dive a bit into specifics, right? When you started creating content as a founder, what was your strategy like? Because eventually you wanted to get business off of LinkedIn, right? Because you
Mhm.
told me that you wanted to see this whole business thing through. So what was your content strategy like? And did you face any issues in the beginning when it came to creating content as a founder specifically?
Yeah, so I think my strategy. So I have a friend, Paul Scalise, who's like a Twitter
Hmm.
poster. He's like a prolific Twitter poster, and
Okay.
he uh, he talks about system one posting, right? So like system one
Mm,
versus system two thinking is like system one thinking is kind of like front of mind, sort of what like passively comes to be, and then system two is sort of like I'll call like manufactured thinking, like very intentional, sort of
mm,
like forced. And so like if I sat down and I'm like, I'm gonna write like what I think is important to be the best cold email, and like I'm gonna try to perfectly codify it. Like that's system two, right?
okay.
And I'm a fan of system one posting, and it's a dual purpose. So first is it alleviates lift from me, like by
Hmm.
literally not stressing what I'm going to create, when I'm going to create it, how I'm going to create it, anything. It means higher output, right? Like a higher volume
Hmm.
of like getting shipping. And then on the flip side, I think for the readers, it's like a lot of people making content are doing everything they can to like polish it,
Make it
and
too
I
good.
think that, yeah, like it's essentially, it's again, like if someone's trying really hard to come off as like really smart and really professional, like personally I don't resonate with that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't like to have to, I don't want clients that expect more than how so to me it's just like a way of expectation setting almost, where it's like, this is how we think, this is how we conduct, this is the
Yeah.
pace at which we operate, and like if this is, and so it's a little bit of like a filtration mechanism, right? Because it's
Mm,
definitely, there's probably some people that look at some of the stuff I do and are like, not for me, and I'm sure
not
that
for
I'm
me.
like
Yeah.
disqualifying some stuff that maybe I would think would be cool to chase otherwise. But there's definitely, there's a lot of people who really like it. Um, and I've just always found and believed that sort of like there's a lot of opportunity to take the a lot of people think like, oh, I don't like LinkedIn content, blah blah blah. It's like, great, go do the thing you think is better. Go do it. Just do it.
Yeah.
And so anyway, system one, off the cuff,
Yeah.
flying, high volume.
I think I personally like System One, to be very honest. But I think both have their own time and place, if
They
that
do.
makes sense. Because not at all times you're creating a piece of content for all purposes. There's every piece of content serves its own purpose. So that is very interesting. I'm going to look into that. And if there's one objection you could say that a lot of times that I come across on sales or discovery calls, founders say, well, we have a business to run, right? And the time that we would potentially put in LinkedIn, the hours, we feel like it could be better justified if you just run the business itself, right? Dedicate that time to it. You as a founder, Kellen, especially in the beginning, right? In the beginning when you didn't see a lot of traction in terms of revenue, how did you justify the time spent on LinkedIn?
Oh, it was easier then because I could.
Really?
I mean, well, I feel
Okay.
like now, now it's more relatable to be like, yeah, if I could get some time back, I mean, definitely like there's
Mm,
times like if I'm ever posting the least right now, it's not because I'm like relaxing, it's because I'm like doing tasks.
interesting.
And so, yeah, but I think like early on, um, like I said, it's like what's interesting about it is it's like I had a lot of momentum in my LinkedIn personal brand. Like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
day I started it sort of like unleashed some energy that was like already caged up through my
Mm,
time doing stuff. I'd worked, so like I was a chief of staff inside of a really early stage company where I was kind of like the number two to this founder. And I got
mm-hmm,
to do that, was where I like really built my personal brand, like the first time, probably like the strongest. Where I had been like an account executive in kind of like a boring company before that. I got into this company and we kind of did like fun content. Our founder was really good at it and stuff
yeah.
like that too. And so I think like, And so I'd done that. And so there's kind of like a lot of people who knew me as someone who's like probably a future founder, like, oh, this guy's sharp. Like, what's he going to be up to? So once I was like, hey, I
Mm.
have services where I can sell you stuff and, you can give me the money and we can do this. There was
Yeah.
a bit, like it wasn't like some sort of like, floodgates, but it definitely was a little, like immediately it was like, we can have customers and we can be doing this stuff, and it was
Love
because
that.
of the brand stuff. I mean, like, honestly, in the pretty much never in this business has my focus been like client acquisition. It's because client
Okay.
acquisition has just been pretty much like a natural outcome of having the business, because I had so much of like a personal brand and reputation, both in the space and through certain skill sets, that by the time I'm like, I now sell these skill sets to people like you for money, people are like, hell yeah,
Mm.
let's, you know what I mean? And so it's changed the brand because, like, we have better things to talk about, like tightening it up, right? Like before, it's sort of like, luckily the stuff I did before sort of like fed into this. But I think, it was just like starting the business was like, I'm just going to do this. Like, that's what content is to me. Like, there's just, I
Yeah.
can't imagine the world around that. Just like open
Yeah.
journaling some of the things I'm doing every day.
Love that. And I really like this style of content because it looks like you're actually documenting your journey as well. It's not just specifically about your business. And speaking of content again, Kellen, when you create content, do you have, I'm sure you have, even not consciously, but subconsciously, probably you have a goal of attracting your target audience with your content, right? Because eventually you want them to buy from you. So when you're creating that kind of a content, do you have a specific type in mind? Like, hey, I'm going to create this kind of a piece of content, maybe pain point or something like that, that these people are going to resonate with?
I should. No, that's like earlier when you asked like what's good,
Okay.
what's weak. Like the weak side of my content is how system one it is. Like, even to your point where you're like
Mm,
system one and system two are both good. Totally agree, right? Like, no
mm,
one, like, my services aren't system one. No one would want to buy services that are just like, we'll do this. And
yeah.
so I think it's like that's as I get my delivery team built out better and more, where it takes less of my involvement to get work out the door.
Mm,
I'll probably have like a real serious like social push. You know what I mean? Because
okay.
and then I will be a little bit more like that. Well, because I pretty much just post whatever. Part of my thing is like a lot of people who are hiring me are like,
Mm-hmm.
man, he knows a lot of different things and he's like strategic about how he thinks about it. And so I purposefully let my LinkedIn sometimes be like essentially like demonstrating excellence without it actually making sense to a lot of people.
Mm,
Like one of my because it's also like, I think really manufactured copies, like, or content is easier to copy, basically. You know what I mean? So it's like there's a bunch of cold email agencies. If I put together some little thing
yeah.
that's like this really, like, I'm sure, and I love these guys, but they'll rip it off. You know what I mean? And so to me,
Yeah.
if instead I post things that's a little esoteric, a little bit confusing, it one might slightly confuse my, you know, competitors, so to speak, which
Yeah.
is good. Not in like a mean, but just like not be, because it's good to have some mystique in general too. Like the
Yeah.
market,
Yeah.
people come and be like,
Makes
hey,
you
what do you
stand out.
do? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And people want to know because it's if you create these open loops where they're aware of you and they know you do things, but they don't
Mm,
exactly know what, like there's a very strong natural drive to pursue the answer to that. Um, and it's where like, oh, I'm gonna get a little esoteric, but like, so if you think abundance scarcity
please.
mindset, right? So the scarce minded people, which is
Mm-hmm.
someone who thinks like, I don't know if I'm gonna win. I don't know how to win. I'm scared I might not win. What they're doing is they're loudly forcing association. So they might be like really focused on talking about how they're a cold email agency, how they build the cold email list, how they build their cold email, all this stuff, because they're basically out of need, like project, they're going like, I need, like, I don't have enough and I need to proclaim to the world who I am. And there's kind
Mm,
of this like totally off assumption that anyone's going to care. No one cares, right? Like that's not like, it's not like, oh, this guy knows how to scrub an email. Like that's not interesting.
mm,
It's not why people buy stuff. It's not what they're not like, oh, sick. This guy is so tidy with his list cleaning. And so I think having it, it's sales development itself. If you think of like an outbound email as you want pattern interrupt, right? So like
mm-hmm.
content needs this. Like if your content is trying to chase, like if you go, hey, I'm going to teach someone how to write a cold email in a video, there's like these ideas that you're probably like, oh, they'll probably like show a box and maybe they'll show line by line, and like, and there's like ways, there's patterns to how the person going, I'm gonna teach you how to write an email is gonna teach you how to write an email, right? And
Yeah.
if you're posting content hoping someone's gonna see this and be like, hey, can I hire you? And if all you're doing is like really well explaining things and kind of like too simply, too plainly,
Mm-hmm.
it eases that open loop in their mind, right? They're like, there's this open loop and like, oh, I get it, I got that, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that for me, part of strategy is like publicly dabbling with really esoteric, like not just face value, like strategically oriented types of things. Um, Sometimes they're like misses. Like sometimes the stuff's stupid. Sometimes I post about things. I'm kind of like, I bet, whatever. But I think that
Yeah.
like the aggregate of the whole experience is
Yeah.
more trustworthy than a lot of content creators. I think it shows like breadth and depth of ability. You know what I mean? And like believability that's like super different.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically that.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And I actually kind of agree with that. It doesn't have to be too polished, too perfect, because one, I don't think is sustainable like a lot of times. Two, it's not a facade, right? It's not like you're forging a new personality. The more you are online,
Yeah.
the better it's going to be for you. So I completely agree with that. One last question before we wrap this up, and it's off the back of something you mentioned a few minutes earlier. You said in the beginning it was easy to justify your time spent on LinkedIn, but right now you feel like you're thinking about it, whether it's justifiable or not. Like, can you just give me a bit of your thought process behind that?
Yeah, it's really more of like sometimes I find myself it's more of like if I realize like, oh, you're too head down, like I'll force myself. Literally, like if you go look,
Uh-huh.
I've posted more in the past like 4 days than like the past like 10.
Yeah.
Um and it just has to do with like if I'm so get too busy. So because I don't structure how I post, so sometimes I'll just kind of notice like symptomatically, like, oh, I'm doing less than I normally do.
Mm.
And it'll be like my reminder, like, hey man, get back on that. Because usually it's kind of like my sign too that like maybe I'm like two heads down. It's like, dude,
Yeah.
if you can't find the time to write like a 10-minute thing, and if you're not taking the time to like get your head clear to like go do that, um, it's kind of like signs that things are, not good. It's content's like not a long. It's more about the
Yeah.
thought, like stoking the thought to do something than it is about like how long it even takes to produce it. I do a lot of text
Yeah.
posts, images, stuff like that.
No, I love that. I think that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I think it's been a great chat. Thank you so much, Kellen, for being here. I hope you had a good time. And yeah, appreciate you here.
Yeah, thank you, dude. No, I had a great time. Appreciate it.
Awesome.